Reclaim the work written in your stars and go from unfulfilled and stuck to confident, intuitive, and excited about your future. As someone who spent over 20 years in corporate land, unhappy and burned out, I now help women reclaim forgotten parts of themselves, trust their inner wisdom, and boldly step into careers that reflect their purpose and their power. I'm Karmen, your quantum career transition coach and your quantum mind body therapy life coach. Thank you for joining the Live in Divine Harmony podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for notifications so you never miss another episode. Let's dive in. Welcome back to a new episode of the Live in Divine Harmony podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today's topic is it inevitably comes up in conversations. It actually recently came up in a conversation at a networking event I attended a couple of days ago. And it's always a topic that people think they have a grasp of what it means, what it is. And then when you start to ask them to give you a specificity, they look at you and they're kind of like, "Huh, I'm not sure." And I feel like it's also a topic that we have gotten away from in society. We don't really we turn a blind eye to now, and especially when it comes to business and relationships. It's extremely important. And relationships, when you look at relationships, the first thing people typically think about is a romantic relationship. And really, everyone has a relationship with self, which we typically tend to think about ourselves last, especially women, relationship with coworkers, you've got friends, families. I feel like the word friend, it gets overused versus it's an acquaintance or somebody who I just met, or it's truly a coworker, right? Sometimes they become friends. But there's different types of relationships in our lives. And how we show up for ourselves is how we show up and how we teach other people to show up for us. And it's interesting because we typically get that backwards. We think how we show up for others is then how we think they're going to show up for us because we have that expectation on them. We've placed an expectation on someone else to show up for us how we want to show up for ourselves, and we can't even show up for ourselves in that way. The biggest one, which so interestingly enough came up in conversation this week, was boundaries. And it's something that a lot of more women have problems with saying no. They have difficulty saying no and having a boundary. And when I talk about creating time in your day, opening up space in your day, in your calendar, some people's calendars are so tightly arranged and they live and die by their calendar. I hear that a lot from people in corporate land. When I ask them, can you create time? They look at me baffled because there's no possibility for them to create time. How can they create time when they have overbooked themselves and scheduled themselves back to back to back to back? And I actually worked for a CEO many years ago when I first got out of college. It was like I think my second or third job out of college. And he would triple book himself. And I would always look at him and say, I cannot split you into three people. So you're going to have to figure this out on your own and start saying no. And when you start to say no, you literally start to create time. You're now telling the universe, I say no to this interaction, this person, this situation. And the universe responds to that. That's a part of the quantum universe, the quantum energy. And the topic at hand, I just realized I have not shared that with you, is values. Values. What are your values? What is a value? And that actually came up, I think about a month ago, and then it came up recently. That and boundaries came up recently. It's so interesting to have this conversation because people think that values should come from outside of them, and it's your value. A value is something that is innately held for you. It's a That's why it's typically called a core value of something that you bring into a relationship. So a great example is trust. I'm going to say trust is one and support is one. And when I started to understand several years ago what trust really is, and that trust does not have to do with anyone else but yourself. It's not I trust you, it's I trust myself. It's I'm creating trust between me and you. And if that's your value, something that you value innately, then it's something that you're bringing to the relationship. And keep in mind, when I say relationship, I mean all relationships, no matter what they are, no matter who this person is to you. Even if it's an acquaintance, somebody who you just saw in a parking lot, somebody who you just met, it's how are you showing up in the world? Because how you show up is what you create. So it all comes from within every single time, which is why in the daily journal, which is currently being updated, by the way, one of the first questions is for you to work on this process to come up with 5 to 6 ways of how you want to feel, because how you feel is how you're going to show up. Even if you may not be feeling that way when you wake up, I give you a process of how to shift into, let's say, joy, so that you can continue to create that in every interaction throughout your day. So let's get back to trust. And I mentioned support. Support is one of my core values. And it's because of how I show up. And frankly, years ago, I used to have an expectation that you should support me. And I purposefully am using those words, you should support me how I support you. And that when I have, first off, when I place an expectation on someone else, I will be let down 100% of the time, because an expectation is actually has to do with you, not anybody else. Notice how today's conversation, it always goes back to you. It's what is your core value? And what I'm realizing as I have people testing the daily journal, because in the daily journal, one of the questions for the monthly check in, there's monthly check ins, and then there's, of course, the journaling every day, the daily check in. The monthly check in is, are your values in alignment with your actions? Great example. I know 2 people who I interact with at least once, if not twice a month, in during networking events. And they will always say that they will do XYZ, and inevitably their actions don't happen. Actually, now that we're talking about it, 3 people that I can think of off the top of my head. And do they mean well? Yeah. But their actions, it doesn't matter if they mean well. It's their actions that matter. Always, hands down. So that tells me that they don't value me. They say that they do, and they really don't. And I used to have emotion wrapped around that, and I just don't anymore. I use it as information. That's it. It's just information. It's information to me about who they are and what their values are. And once you know what your values are and you understand what your, not just what your core values are, you also understand that that's what you're bringing into every single interaction every single day. And that is a part of how you're creating your life. You're co creating your life. So when you then start to use the journal and you start to reflect on, oh, are my values in alignment with my actions? You can really reflect and answer that question for yourself. And for me personally, because support is one of my biggest values, if I overgive it, meaning if I continue to support you, even though you haven't shown up diddly squat for me, and the biggest one I've noticed over the past, I'm going to say 2 years roughly, for me personally, is I realized that there's a lot of people that I would reach out to just to say, hey, are you okay? Haven't heard from you in a while. You know, I would always be the first one to reach out. And I stopped. And when I stopped, I wanted to see who would really reach out. And it's interesting because one person actually asked me several months ago, I don't hear from you anymore. I told them why, and they still continued to not show up. So, would I say that support is one of their main values? Absolutely not. So, part of this to consider is how much of your energy are you leaking? And I've talked about energy leaks before. We energy leak throughout the day, all day, every day. And when you realize that you get to choose. You're at choice. You're always at choice. Am I going to continue or am I going to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore? And for me personally, my biggest downfall was social media. And now that so much has changed on socials, I made a choice, conscious choice, that I will limit that. I'm, people ask me, well, what are you doing this weekend? Or, what have you been up to? Healing, building my empire, helping people, helping women have a thriving, passionate, purposeful career. That is what I'm doing. And once I learned and started to implement into my life this quantum way of living, it literally has changed everything. So for me, there is no really weekend because every single day has fun and joy and purpose and business and meeting with people. Now, does every day look different? Yes. And I don't have my days in a week segmented out like I used to, meaning in my mind, I thought that I could only do such and such task on a weekend or during the week, frankly. And when you start to really flow with the universal energies, it is a complete game changer. A complete game changer. And you're not tying yourself to that calendar anymore. I had a wonderful catch up call with a friend a few hours ago, and we were talking about as soon as I have an idea, I execute it. And it's something that I've learned from my teacher, Leanna Shanti, in class, in quantum mind body therapy class. Honestly, I've taken so many classes. It's probably been before that. And I've learned it. It is It is something that when you learn it and you execute it, your entire life will change, especially when you own your own business. In general, though, when you have an idea, go execute it. So, great example. When I have ideas that come to me, which they come a lot, and they typically will come on my morning walks or on drives. I will, if it is a walk or a drive, then I will do audio notes to myself so I don't forget and then execute it when I can get to a place to execute it, whatever the idea is. And a lot of times it's ideas personally for the podcast and or for social media or something, that has to do with a client. And it's a let's talk about this right now. We're not going to wait. There's a reason why I'm getting the idea at this particular time. Literally. It is divine timing for it. That could be a new value of mine that I have because I value myself so much. I value my ideas so much that I am willing to execute it right then and there. No more am I thinking, oh, well, I have to wait. I can't do it because I can't work on during the weekend. I can only work during the week. I used to have that idea in my head. That was a story that I had, and it came from my time in corporate, where when I first got out of college, I was working weekends. I could work up to 7 days in a row or 10 days in a row without a day off. I was exhausted. I also was not doing what I love at all. I was working for money to pay rent, um, to move up in that company. And I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. And so, especially when it comes to jobs, there are some times when it's imperative that you take a job to pay the bills. We've all done it. I've done it. There are times when you take a bridge job to get out of a toxic environment, to get out of somewhere just to pay the bills. We've all done it. And when you finally get to the point where you are living, working in this job career, you're doing what you love, you're passionate about it, it's a part of your purpose. You may not quite know how it fits the purpose yet, and that's okay, but it is fulfilling your soul. It is satiating your soul. You are excited to wake up every day. You're not looking at the clock. You're not really looking at the calendar. It could be that you don't really have a calendar anymore because you are that excited and you just hit the ground running and you know what you're going to do today. That is, you're operating now in the quantum from your soul, from your heart, from your, I'm going to say your energy body, and out of your head. And those are two completely different feelings. And I had a conversation with a gal recently, and she's like, it's hard for me to just take, any job that I don't believe in their mission. That is a part of her values. And I 100% understand that more than probably what people realize, because I've been in so many situations where it doesn't align with my values. Another great example, I found out about an upcoming networking event, and it's a brand new networking event for this networking group. I go to this networking group on every month, at least twice a month. And this new event that they have that's going to happen, they're eating too at a restaurant, one of those Brazilian steakhouses. I am a vegan. Why on earth would I go there? And she said, well, you can go. There's a salad bar. Okay. I do have some new set of values though, when it comes to what I choose to eat, what I choose to physically consume and put into my body. Do I really want to see dead flesh? Other people gnawing on dead flesh? Nope. So I will not be attending that event. That is a strong value that I hold, one of my core values. So start to ask yourself, what really are your core values? And I encourage you to even look it up. And this is something I'm that is incorporated in what I offer and to work with clients. This is something that we are going to have that conversation about. What is it that you really value? What is it that you really want to be doing? Because they go hand in hand. Great example. It's pretty obvious. Somebody like myself who's vegan is not going to go work at a slaughterhouse. not going to happen. And I've read stories of people who used to work at a slaughterhouse and they realized truly what they're doing. They stopped, they left, they became vegan. My signature program of quantum reinvention, which is a 3-month deep dive, it's a full transformation. This is one of the topics that we're going to uncover for you because it is that important of what is it that you value? Because what you value is going to be a part of your career. It's a part of how you show up every day. One last I was already working and I was working at a bank after college, even though my degree is in marketing. And it's hard to break into a field, typically, especially marketing, when you don't have that experience. But no one will give you that experience. It's kind of like, well, how can I get the experience that I need if you won't give me a shot? And I started to do what's called informational interviews. And I had a list of like 3 to 5 questions. And back then, email had just came on the scene as we now know it, because it first started out as code and written DOS. And I would meet with people in person, 30 minutes, an hour. And what I realized, I thought in my mind at that time that I was talking with these people to learn about what they do. It wasn't about the work. It wasn't about marketing, which, by the way, so many people don't understand what marketing is and how large of an umbrella marketing is and everything that's under marketing. So let's just say that. I started to realize that it was what were my values? What did I value in a company? What did I value in a culture? And that's when I started to realize I don't want to work in this type of culture. This is the type of culture that I want to work in instead. And I'll be honest, the only lady that I remember talking with was, I think, an assistant at Q95. And I really don't remember how I got connected with her. And she met with me, sweetest lady ever. And she shared some things with me. And I told her, I said, that just doesn't sound like the type of culture that I want to work in. That's a part of my value. So your value set is it's almost like subconsciously running your life and you don't even realize it. And it could even be causing frustration, especially in your career, and you aren't sure why. The last place that I worked in corporate land, only certain people were held accountable. And by the way, now that I say this, I kind of chuckle because we're starting to see that here in society. Like a lot of people in society were never held accountable and now they are, and people are big mad because of it. And I'm like, that is one of my main values is accountability. You should be held accountable. 100% hold yourself accountable. I hold myself accountable. I actually like accountability partners and buddies. I know I'm odd for that. Most people don't like it. And it's because I have a different set of values. And this is one of the many topics that we uncover during our time together when we work together in this 12-week container. Because that is how important your values are, and they're yours, and you get to choose. Clearly, mine have changed throughout time because I've changed and I've healed because I wasn't always vegan. For years, I was pescatarian. I went pescatarian and then vegetarian. And then I finally was like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm going full vegan. And I knew that I wanted to, but I kept making excuses. The ego kept coming into play. I didn't have that strong value yet there. I wasn't able to take a stand yet for what it really truly meant because it's a major life change. So I encourage you to start to think about this. I love to journal on it, look up values. I am literally looking at a set of core values, a list of them that I got off the internet. Google it and just remember what values are. Values are what you're bringing to the table. And it's going to look different than what somebody else with the same value brings to the table. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just your way of bringing in that value versus their way of bringing in that value. Two invitations. If you would like to connect, get to know each other, hop on a 30-minute call, see if it makes sense for us to work together. You're ready. If you're that woman and you're like, you know what? I want something different in my life. I am ready to have a passionate career, to live out my soul's calling, to what I call reclaim that work that's written in my stars, right? If that is you, then book your 30-minute clarity call right now. Or if you're like, you know what, I just want to get a taste of the transformation and the information right now, I do have a clarity and compass session. It's called the Career Awakening session. It's 90 minutes plus 3 days of Voxer support. And it is a powerful jumpstart session for that woman who's feeling stuck, maybe a little overwhelmed, maybe even at a crossroads, and you're looking for clarity fast. Then you can hop on my calendar today. That is only $222. It's an excellent investment for everything that you're going to receive during our 90 minutes together. And it is packed full because I always love to give value. That's one of my core values, is to give value to you. So, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I encourage you to also share this episode with someone who may find it valuable. Until next time, sending you much love. Take care.